Hello, I'm going to talk to you about Codio and what it is. Give you just kind of a brief introduction and some tips and tricks on how to use Codio. So first of all, what is Codio? It is an online platform that allows you to interact with an environment and submit and play with code for different languages. Codio is used for several different courses. So the code that you'll see in here may not pertain to your exact course, but that's okay. All the concepts are the same. I'm not really doing any coding in this. I'm just talking about the environment and how to navigate. So by putting all of this online, it really takes out a whole lot of the guesswork that is required when students need to set up an environment. If they need to install a program in order to write the code, there's configuration, there's errors that could happen. It might work on somebody else's machine and not yours, or vice versa. So there's a lot that can go wrong when installing applications and having to have everything run on your own machine because everybody's machine is different. By doing it online, it's all hosted in one location. It's already installed. It's already working, and everybody just connects to it. So it doesn't matter what platform your computers are running. It'll all work just fine. So that helps to take away any of that configuration and setup. It's already done for you. So that's what Codio is and why we use it. Now, when you first log in, you'll get a page that looks something like this. And this screenshot is really just the upper half of the screen of the home page on Codio. On the next slide, we'll see the lower half of the screen. And before you can log in and start working in your class, you do have to be able to join the class. And typically that'll happen when your instructor posts an announcement or maybe even sends out an email that has an access token or a class token. That token will be used in order to join the class. So if you have not yet received that token and the courses have already begun, then reach out to your instructor and see if you can get that token in order to join. Otherwise, hang tight and you should get that soon. But when you first log in, you'll get something like this. Up at the top is where you'll see previously or recently visited classwork. Now, when you first start your class, you just probably won't have anything on there, and that's okay. But as you start working through the different modules and sections, these will change. Every time you log in, it'll show you what you were most recently working on. So you can quickly get back to it if you need to. Now, down just below that, which would actually be about the middle of the screen, midway down, there are a few different drop downs that let you choose between the different courses, the terms, and even the modules. And that's just because, again, Codio is used for multiple different courses, and it just so happens that you could be taking two courses at the same time that use Codio. And in order to be able to switch between the two courses and work on the correct stuff when you need to, you'll need to adjust these drop downs so that you can access the correct work. I also want to draw attention to the one on the far right here, and that's specifically for the courses like IT 140. There is, inside this drop-down is where you'll choose between the different modules and the different projects. When you first start the course, make sure you choose this drop-down and select Module 1 rather than Project 1, because you don't want to start working on the projects that are due in week 3 in week 1. It's going to overwhelm you, and you don't want to do that. So make sure you pay attention to that drop-down and select those as needed. Once you select those, the lower half of the screen will populate with some of the different sections that are available. And these are just your weekly assignments. They're typically referenced in Brightspace as well. You select one of those and it'll take you into the section, and you can start working through and reading the material and submitting the assignments. There's also a course textbook that is integrated in many of the courses. If that's there, if that is available to you, it'll be right here. You can click on that, and that's basically just the textbook. There's also this personal playground, which is an area where you can practice your code. It's kind of like a sandbox environment that is separate from all your graded assignments, so you can go in there and interact with the environment, play around with some of the code, play around with the database systems or whatever it is that you're working on. and you don't have to worry about affecting the graded assignments that are in the sections below that. So it's kind of nice to kind of get your feet wet or test some things out. Now, when you select a module or a section, you'll typically be presented with something that looks like this, where you'll have some related textbook readings on the right-hand side, and then a code editor or a terminal even on the left-hand side. Over here on the left is example code. You can often make changes to it and run it in order to see what the output would be, make changes to it, and just play around. Clicking this button in this example will run the code that is on the left side. Oftentimes in the code that is provided, there will be comments to help explain what's going on. Comments are lines that are inside your source code that will be ignored. Okay, they're not going to be executed. They're just comments that are there to explain what's going on. Comments are for the programmers, and the code is for the computer. So comments can help to explain what's going on. Also on the right-hand side in the textbook type stuff is usually your in-depth explanation of the code, maybe some instructions, related readings, things like that. As you progress through the challenge or through the modules, you'll get to different challenge sections. The challenge on the left-hand side is typically where you'll have your terminal or your code editor, where you can make the code. That's where you'll write everything that will solve the challenge. Over here, which is on just to the right of your editor, is where you'll have the challenge instructions. This is what explains exactly what Codio wants you to do. They're going to give you some number. They want you to do this, yada, yada, yada. Whatever the instructions are, they will be right here. Sometimes they can be a little vague, but try to read them carefully and understand what they're asking you before you start writing the code or actually solving the challenge. Once you have your code or your terminal entries to your liking that you think will pass the challenge, you can click this button that says check it. That will submit the code, and Codio will run it and compare the output that is returned to what they're expecting. There is no limit to the number of times you can click this button. I want to bring that up because some people may feel like it's a one and done kind of thing. You have one chance to submit it. If it doesn't pass, then it doesn't pass. You're done. You move on. That's not the case. If you're working on a coding challenge like this here, you can click that button. If it doesn't pass, you can go make changes to your code, click check it again. If it doesn't pass again, you go make changes, click check it, and so on. And so you can do that as many times as you need to in order to pass the challenge. Now there are times that you'll encounter a multiple choice question or even a radio button kind of thing, or a true and false sort of question. In those cases, those are one and done. You only have one chance to answer those because they are just typically just a true and false, or you have to select one of three options or something to that effect. In those cases, you don't get to do it over and over again. You just have the one chance. But if it is anything that requires you to type out some code or type out some queries or do some terminal manipulation, then there's no limit. Now, once you pass the challenge or you get to a point where you want to move on and come back to it later, you can click the next button down here. That will take you on to the next section in the module. Once you get to the end, it'll look something like this. It'll say, hey, you're all done. Up at the top left, if you click on Codio and then Dashboard, that will take you right back to that dashboard, which is the home page that I showed you earlier. There's also a button down here that does the same thing. There are some arrows up at the top right that let you progress backward and forward through the different pages, through the different modules, the different sections in your module. There's a settings menu that will bring up some different settings that are available. And then there's also this table of contents or quick access navigation, which will let you quickly access and jump through the different sections. And I'm going to jump back here to another previous slide. So over here on the right side, this is what you'll see when you open up that quick access navigation. You'll see something to this effect that will let you just quickly jump between the different sections if you want to jump rather than clicking the back or forward buttons multiple times. All right, let's get back here. All right, now I want to talk to you about some of the errors that you may get, that you will probably get while working through different challenges. Errors are okay, they're going to happen, right? Please always read your error messages. They will typically give you a good indication of where to start in order to fix it so that you can pass the challenge. In this example, this is saying that there is an actual error in the code. Okay, this is an error. This is a syntax error in this example. Something that crashes the program. So when you click check it, Codio will try to run your code, the code that's on the left-hand side. If there is an error in the code, it will crash. And you'll get an error message, something along these lines that says, typically it'll give you a line number and then an error message. So in this case, it's telling me line 7 has a syntax error. So if I go up to line 7 in the code, I can address that and say, oh, look, I'm missing a character, a colon here at the end of the line. I change that, fix it, click check it again, and that error should be gone. So again, these error messages indicate that something went wrong. The program could not continue from beginning to end. There was something that broke it. And that's okay, it happens. But always read your error messages. They'll give you a good place to start. This one here is a little bit different. This error is not really an error, it's just the wrong answer. So this just says that your code runs just fine. There is no syntactic errors. The Codio was able to begin and reach the end of your code without crashing. The only problem is that your program may have produced the wrong output, or output that Codio did not expect. So again, always read this. This says the program failed for input 100. Codio expected you to print the word hit, but instead you printed hello. So in that case, you'll look at your code, say, where does it print hello? Well, here it is. Maybe I should change that to say hit, and change it, click check it, and voila, it passes, everything's good. Now I want to bring up too, Codio can be extremely picky about your output. Over here it says it expects you to print hit with a capital H and a lowercase I and a lowercase t. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but there is no space before and no space after the word hit. So if in my code I had typed in hit with a lowercase h and a lowercase I and a lowercase t, it does not match what Codio is expecting, and it will probably tell me I'm wrong. Also, if I did print with a capital H and a lowercase I and a lowercase t, but there was a space after the t, Codio would probably say that's wrong because they're not expecting there to be a space at the end. So when you get a message that looks like this, where it's not telling you that your program crashed, it actually completed correctly or completed successfully, it just didn't give you the right answer, then look very closely at the expected output and compare it to your output. And try to figure out how you can make your output match the expected output. Okay? And then if it looks right, pay attention to capitalization, spelling, punctuation, and things like that. And that's all that's explaining there. Once you make the change, you can click check it again. All right, now if you click on that settings icon up at the top that I mentioned previously, there are usually some options here. This top one is to restore current files, and that's if you, so typically when you begin a challenge, it will have some preloaded code in there. And if you start making changes and you get to a point where you can't figure it out and you want to just start over, you can go up there and click Restore Current Files, and that will just kind of reset everything back to the way they were when you began the challenge. Basically, put it back to the default, factory reset kind of thing. It's not going to affect any of your grades if you have previously completed some of the challenges and you choose Restore Current Files. It will not erase your grades, so don't worry about that. It just kind of puts the files back to the starting state so that you can restart. There's also an option to mark as completed. This will mark the section as completed, whatever section you're in. Now be careful with this. You only want to hit this button, only select to mark something as completed when you are completely satisfied with your progress. That's because as soon as something is marked as completed, you will not be able to make changes to that section anymore. You're done. So if you have only completed 4 of the 5 challenges and you mark it as completed, then you're only going to be able to complete 4 of the 5 challenges. Now, after you click mark as completed, it will pop up with an alert and an error, or not an error, but a warning message to tell you, hey, are you sure you want to do this? So it's not extremely easy to accidentally mark something as completed, but perhaps you accidentally mark this week's module as completed instead of last week's module. It might happen. If it does happen and you mark something as completed that you shouldn't have, send an email to your professor immediately to ask them to open that back up, because they're the only ones who can open it up. Yeah, so be careful with that, because if you accidentally mark it as completed on a Sunday afternoon while you're still working, you may not get it opened back up until Monday, and then at that point your stuff is late. So be careful. Last thing I want to bring up here is there is a help button within Codio. Try to avoid this just because it probably doesn't do what you think it does. Help is not for when you're working on a module, working on a challenge, for example, and you can't quite figure it out. See this one over here, it's working on the Fibonacci sequence. You can't figure it out, you're having trouble with it, and you're like, oh, hey, look, there's a help button. I'm going to click help, and maybe somebody can help me get this, get through this challenge. That's not what that help button is for. That's a completely different thing. That help button is specific to Codio. You are having problems because Codio can, and Codio is the only one who can fix it. That is when you would use help. Basically, Codio technical support. It is not tutoring help. If you come across a time when you need some help that is related to your material, I can't figure it out, I'm not sure what to do, I can't reach I can't solve this challenge, then instead go over to Brightspace and go into your learning modules and look for the learning module labeled Academic Support. Within that learning module, there are links for to be able to get to the workshop schedule, so you can see when SNHU is doing workshops. You can schedule a one-on-one session with a peer tutor. You can submit papers for written feedback. There's even drop-in tutoring available if you can't get a session booked with a peer tutor. There's drop-in tutoring links as well. So all of that is located there in the academic support module within Brightspace. So when you need help, go there instead. Don't use the help button in Codio. So that does it for the content. Thank you for watching, and good luck in your courses.